So today's video is about this Sony VAIO laptop that I picked up off Facebook Marketplace just shortly a little while ago. The reason I picked it up was a couple of things. One is it looked in pretty good condition. Secondly, it has an AMD Duron processor, and I don't have any laptops with that processor, so it was nice to fill a gap in the collection. But also I was interested in this because I think this is the point at which Sony kind of loses the plot with regard to mainstream laptop manufacture. I think kind of around this time, which is around 2002, they lost their way. They started doing slightly unusual things, which meant they became more and more niche over time. They still made very good products, but it wasn't really a product that everybody wanted to buy. It was a product that only a few people could afford, or that only people with a certain kind of aesthetic wanted. So I think this is kind of like the last of the mainstream Sony VAIOs. In my opinion, you may feel free to disagree with me. So I picked this up. Quite nice price. There were a couple of photos were on there. It seems to be in good quality, but I didn't really know much about it. It was from a private seller. Don't know the history of it. I see that it comes with a generic charger, so the original charger's missing. It did come in a Targus case, but you know it's been fairly well looked after. And so what we're going to do today is have a little look at it. We're going to see what's on it, and one of the big problems with Sony VAIOs is that they're almost impossible. That's not true. It's very difficult to restore them to their factory settings because the restore discs tend to go missing, and each restore disc is key to each particular model and even each sub-variant of each individual model. So unless you have the actual specific CD for this VAIO, you won't be able to restore it to factory. The best you can do is put a generic XP install on it, for example. Now what I'm hoping is this has still got the original install on it, and if it has, we can either manage to take the install drivers off it, if they're hidden away somewhere in a directory. We can have a look, see if there's a recovery partition, and if not, we can kind of tidy up the existing installation and image it, so at least we've got something to restore should something happen to this in the future. Say the hard drive fails. The picture showed it working. I presume the hard drive does work. Anyway, let's have a little look at the outside. So typical with Sony and Apple, the logo's kind of upside down, so when you're opening it, it's away from you, but then when it's open, other people see it correctly. This is a kind of fairly large, I'm guessing it's 14 or 15 inch laptop. It's not particularly light. I think the specs say it's 3 kilos. So this is kind of more of a desktop replacement. I've got loads of other Sony laptops that are all much, much lighter than this, and I really like those. And this also goes back to the design aesthetic. This is kind of the last of those kind of purpley Sony laptops. From here on, it goes kind of corporate grey or black. Sometimes weirdly, you know, blue or red or whatever, pink. But most of them lose this design aesthetic from about this time. So it's got the VAIO logo on here. It's got these kind of 4 little squares, which often appears in Sony design language of the time. I don't think it's for stacking. I think it's part of the VAIO design language. The material's kind of textured, but it's in very good condition. There's no scratches. Around the front, there's a purple catch, but nothing else. On the sides, the other reason I wanted to get this is because it's got a CD-ROM DVD player and a floppy disk drive. I don't know if either of these work yet, but this module you can swap out for, I believe, another battery. This is fixed. Around the back we've got a modem, got 2 USBs, I'm guessing they're 1.1s, power in, and the flap that covers the extra ports is still present, which is really nice. And in typical Sony style, it's labelled. So we've got serial, parallel, VGA, and networking. It's really interesting. It's quite telling of the time that the modem port was more accessible than the network port. You know, dial-up was still very, very common in the very early 2000s. On the other side, we've got color-coded audio ports. We've got 2 PC card slots. They've still got the blanking plates in, that's nice. And We've got Firewire, iLink as Sony calls it, and that's the 400 small connector type. This I think is the battery. So yeah, so a little hinge cover there for the battery. Let's just have a little look at that. So it's original Sony, has got a manufacture date on it. Not that I can see. It's not bulging, it doesn't appear to be leaking, so that's all good. And it went in this way around, didn't it? Nice little hinge mechanism. On the bottom we've got a few things. The rubber feet are still intact. That's unusual for Sonys. They often go rubbery and gooey. We've got two flip out feet at the back for increasing the angle for typing if you want it to. We've got a little connector. I'm guessing, yes, there's a dock connector under there, so there must have been a dock available for this. Obviously I haven't got that. And then we've got two doors. I'm guessing one is memory, one might be modem, and then we've got a release catch for this modular bay down here. So if we just do that and pull this out, we can remove the floppy drive. Again, it's the original. Don't know if it's working, but I think you could replace that with a second battery or a space saving / weight saving module. It's in really good condition actually for its age. It's 21 years old now, so that's nice. It's got Windows XP Home as the default install. So it's a Duron, so it's kind of like Pentium 3 Celeron kind of equivalent age. So this would work with Windows 98, Windows ME quite nicely, or Windows 2000, but we've got an XP certificate of authenticity on here. So that's all good. Let's open it up and have a look on the inside. So as I said, the Sony logo is now the correct way up. So here's that kind of design aesthetic I was telling you about. It's kind of grey and purple. We've got this kind of purple strip across the back, purple highlights on the touchpad. Again, it's in pretty good condition on the inside. Windows XP sticker. There's none of the kind of advertising stickers. There are some wear on the keys, so it's obviously been used, but it's in very good condition. I did have it plugged in for a few minutes to see if the charger worked, so it's possible the battery might hold a charge. Shall we find out? Okay. For about a second. So we definitely need to keep it attached to the mains end for the next part. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. It's in very good condition. Screen's quite a decent size. The bezels aren't very big for the era, so that's all good. Speakers here, power switch. It's a PCG-FX501. So I've looked on archive.org. There's no restore media for this. I've looked on a couple of other specialist Sony websites, and there's no recovery media for this specific model. There's some available for the previous generation model, but if you have the recovery CDs for the PCG-FX501, the 502 or the 503, which are the kind of two upgraded models in the same range that release at the same time, if you fancy uploading them to archive.org, you'll be doing everybody a massive favour. If you've got any Sony recovery discs, please consider archiving them so that they are not lost to prosperity. Sony no longer support Windows XP, so all their XP related information has been removed from their website, including any restored kind of utilities. As I said, there may be a restore petition on here, we don't know. So let's plug it in, turn it on, see what happens. I've got a new VGA capture device, so we'll be trying that. We might be able to get some footage direct from the screen rather than pointing the camera at the screen. So let's get that all set up. Okay, so I've got a green light on the power brick. I've got no lights on here, even though I've just plugged it in, checked it's connected correctly. Just turn it, oh, okay, let's turn it on. So now we've got a power light, and we had a Sony logo, so that's good. Okay, so it's booting straight up to Windows XP. Hard drive's really quiet. I can hardly hear it spin up. There's not a big noise from the fan either, so it's probably not completely clogged with dust. All reassuring so far. Let's say it was sold to me as working. Okie dokie. So, it obviously hasn't been reset to default because we have 3 users. We have the admin user, which is obviously default. We've got a created user who's got 164 unread emails. We'll try not to look at those. And then the guest account looks like it's switched on as well. And looks like the capture device is also working. So that's nice. It's the original install, hopefully. We've got some accounts. Now, I was kind of prepared for this because for Windows XP, it's actually fairly trivial to crack the passwords if you have the right software. So there's a thing called OPH crack. There's different versions, one for Windows XP, one for Windows 7. And this will do a rainbow table crack of passwords on the user account database. It's not completely foolproof, but it works a lot of the time. And this is why, if you've got physical access to a computer, almost all security can be circumvented with time and effort. So obviously, I now own this. This is now mine. I'm allowed to do this. I don't want to know what their passwords are, but I want to be able to access the computer to try and save those Sony specific apps and drivers. So let's put this in and then reboot. We might have to go into the BIOS to set the CD-ROM drive as the default. Let's have a look, see what happens. Drive spinning up, the optical drive, so that's another reassuring sign. This looks in really good condition for being 21 years old. Very happy with it. So is it going to go to the BIOS or is it going to go to... Oh, it's going straight to the optical drive. That's nice. So we're just going to go for graphic mode automatic. So this is not a tutorial on how to use OPH crack. If you put it on automatic, it's pretty straightforward. What it's going to do is going to boot up into a minimal version of Linux, and then it has the pre-hashed password tables. They're called rainbow tables, and it just compares those against the hash that's in the database. So it doesn't actually try and uncrack the database, uncrack your password. It just compares a load of existing passwords with the passwords in the database, and if it matches, it knows what it is. And that's a fairly quick way of doing it, and it's less CPU intensive. It can be a problem if the whole database doesn't fit into memory. I don't know how much memory this has got. I think the advert said it had 256, which I think was the default. So although Sony doesn't support this anymore, they have got some of the documentation on the website, and I seem to remember either 128K or 256K is default. If it's running Windows XP, I'm guessing it's 256. So it's just booting up now. Okay, well actually that's really quick. Let me just quickly explain what's just happened. So if you look down at the bottom here, it's preloaded the database and it's going through the database, comparing the hashes in the database to the one on the hard disk, and it's going through that fairly quickly. But the interesting thing is it's found 4 passwords already because they're empty. So the person who owned this before wasn't particularly worried about security because they put no password on any of the accounts, including the administrator account. So that's very interesting. There's 2 disabled accounts. Let's see what they're called. Okay, so it looks like these may be corporate accounts. So maybe this was used in a corporate environment at some point. But yeah, so it's, as you can see, the passwords are empty. So there's no password at all. So we don't actually need to wait for this to finish, but it's actually got to 98% already while I've been talking. So Had there been some password in there, there was kind of a chance it might have worked out what they are if they were not completely random. Even if they're completely random, it sometimes gets them right. Most people don't use random passwords, they use a combination of words and phrases, and this can detect a lot of those. We're limited by the size of the CD. Anyway, this is not a tutorial about OPH crack. The good news is we should be able to get into this fairly easily. So we're just going to shut this down. Although, while we're in here, well, touchpad's not working that well. What other stuff is on here? System tools. Yep. Yeah, so touchpad's being very sensitive. So there's a file manager, partition editor. Let's have a look at the partitions on the drive. See if there is a hidden boot partition. Okay, so that loaded and crashed straight away. So yeah, that's not good, is it? It's not appeared on the other desktop. No. So I'm not sure why that happened. Let's do it the other way. Let's go to, it was a file manager. Let's just open the partitions in file manager, see if that works. So I'm guessing VAIO is the partition. Okay, so basically media HDA1, so that's the first partition on the hard drive. It's got the Windows files in there, so there's no oh, hang on, local disk partition 5 has got some files on it. Those look like user files, though, not restore files. So maybe the disk is split into, yeah, I think it's a 20 gigabyte hard disk, and there's two partitions. One's 10, and then the other's nearly 10. Yeah, so there's no recovery to partition. There's two data partitions on here, a C and a D, as it would be under Windows XP. Okay, so let's exit out of here. Now we know there's no passwords. Let's go in and have a look. So we want to halt the system because we want to eject that CD-ROM. It powered off very quickly, didn't give me a chance to eject it. There we go. How do you get into the BIOS on this? Is it F2? It is. Let's have a quick look at the BIOS while we're in here. So it's PCG-FX501 GB version. So it's got the pound symbol on the keyboard. Date and time is completely wrong. Let's just change that so that we'll see if the CMOS battery is working. Okay, so it's an American style, so hold on. Yeah, so it's 02, but it's not letting me type that in logically. Okay, we'll do that from within Windows. And yes, it has got 256 megs of RAM. It's got 8 meg dedicated video, ATI Rage M1, I think, is the graphics card. Primary master is a 20 gigabyte, secondary master is the CD-ROM, and it is a CD-ROM DVD combo, it's not a writer. The 502 and the 503 had CD writers. It's got a serial parallel port, which we knew. Touchpad, external mouse, you can do both. LCD and CRT, that's handy, that's why my capture device is working. Oh, I quite like the Lego mode, I'm going to switch that. If you don't know what that is, I'll show you in a second. Let's turn the volume down a bit though. Change value with a space, that's how you do it. 4 probably seems reasonable. We don't want to boot off the network. Security, there's no password set, thank goodness. What we're going to do when we shut the lid, we're probably going to suspend boot order. So CD-ROM was first, removable devices. Oop. Let's get that top. It's a legacy floppy drive, so there is the floppy drive in there. USB is not listed there. Is that because there's no USB installed? hard drive is a Toshiba, yeah. So that's all very straightforward. Let's save that. So the logo motion is on Sony's, rather than just having the little Sony logo, there's an animation. There you go. So I don't know if the screen capture picked that up in time, but it's nice, and it makes that nice little Sony logo noise. So let's be back in. Now we know there's no passwords. It's going to be trivial to have a little poke around. Do we go for that user account first, or do we go for the admin account? That's the question. We want to know whether the original stuff's in there. We don't worry, we're not interested in that guy's data, so let's go for the admin account. See if there's any kind of backup utility where we can create the restore media. That's if there's no restore partition, it might be an option to create restore media from within the device itself. It's been a little while since I played with XP. It's very, very familiar. Admin, like whoever it was, like horses. Okay, so it's got the VAIO wallpaper. That's a good start. That means there's a good chance that it's got the original install on here, and the original drivers and apps might still be on here. Interestingly, PageMaker 5. Haven't seen that for a little while. Microsoft Word. So I'm guessing things like Office are in there. There's not a lot on the desktop. Recycle bin's empty. Let's have a look in the start menu. So programs. What have we got? We've got loads of stuff. So we've got the normal Windows accessories. We've got some Adobe stuff. Got Adobe Studio, Type Manager, PageMaker 7, PageMaker 5. Okay, so this person was obviously doing some kind of publishing. That's what happened last time I picked up a Mac, as somebody who was a publisher. Beatnik Player, I'm guessing that's an audio or video player. DK Interactive Learning. Test for Success, English and Maths. So I'm guessing whoever used this also had a child. DVGate, so this is one of the Sony specific apps that's really hard to find for your specific version. So that is nice to have on there. Games, I'm guessing, yes, that's just the standard Windows XP games. Java 2. Logos application. Unabridged, I don't know what that is. I don't think that's a Sony thing. Let's have a quick look at the README. Library system. Any Microsoft Windows 3.1 or later. So that's quite an old app by the looks of it. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to open it up in case something pops up that's specific to the previous owner. Microsoft Office Tools. Movie Shaker. It's another one of the Sony apps that I was hoping to get. So that's really nice. Got the Mozilla combination of browser and mail. My DSC. Okay, yeah, so that's for digital cameras. I don't know if that's a Sony specific one, but good to have that on there. Not an antivirus. Not antivirus setup. So maybe, so quite often these came with a 90-day trial of a Norton antivirus. It'd be able to kind of set it up. Maybe that's never been done, so there may be no antivirus on here, which would make it a bit dodgy. PC Study Bible. Okay, so Bible study software. Power Archiver, that's kind of like a zip type thing. Presto Image Photos. So Presto is a imaging suite. They did some scanner stuff as well, so that's probably the scanning side of things. Mr. Photo, I was guessing some photo editor. QuickTime, obviously. Real Player. Those were the days, hey. Smart Capture, I'm not sure what that is. That might be another Sony thing, particularly it's got this Sony, the picture book camera icon on next to Smart Capture, so I think that's probably a Sony install app. Sonic Stage is definitely a Sony original app. What's in startup? Acrobat Assistant, that's logical. Acrobat Reader 5 is installed. Device Detector 2, not sure what that is. Via System Information, we'll come back to that very soon. Visual Flow, that's another one of those Sony proprietary bits of software. It's the kind of like the cover flow type thing I seem to remember, like on early versions of iTunes. WinDVD, I think they used to come as standard, particularly with drives that had devices that had DVD players drive built in. They used to bundle the software as well. Zondervan, I've got no idea what that is. It's got a nicely designed logo. It's probably commercial software. Acrobat Distiller, so again, that's publishing, reader, Club VAIO. Okay. Image Station, Internet Explorer, all the Microsoft Office apps, including Access. So this was Office Professional, probably. Microsoft Explorer, MSN Explorer, sorry. Outlook Express, Real Player, blah, blah, blah. All the rest is, oh no, Olympus. So they obviously had Olympus voice hub, so not camera. So they probably had an Olympus dictation machine attached to this at some point. Microsoft ActiveSync as well. So maybe they had a portable device like an HP 620LX, like in the video we had recently. Maybe something slightly different. But the good news is this looks like it's the original install of the Sony specific Windows XP. So at the minimum, what we can do is image this hard drive, and we can always restore it if we need to. It'd be nice if we could create some restore media. I haven't seen anything in here so far that would make that seem very likely. Let's go to VAIO system information. It might be there, or it might be in Club VAIO, I don't know. So this is very minimal, but it does confirm what we suspected. It's the PCG-FX501. We knew that from the BIOS, serial number, etc., etc. So it's Windows XP Service Pack 2. That's probably why it's running so well in 256K of memory, megabytes of memory. Service Pack 3, became a bit of a memory hog. So yeah, so the range is the 501, the 502. I thought it was the 503, but it's a 505. And I think these two had bigger hard drives and also writable optical media. This is the base spec one. And it is a mobile AMD Duron at 1 gigahertz. Okay, excellent. But no way of creating backup media from there. Let's have a little look at the other programs. Trackpad's a little bit unpredictable. It may be because it's not clean. Have a look at that. So what's Club VAIO? Okay, so it's going to take us to a web page, which obviously isn't going to be possible because I haven't got any network connected. But also, I suspect Sony no longer support that. Nice, an old version of Mozilla though. What version is this? .1.01. Wow. So this is 2002 that this machine came out. That's the copyright notice on here. So this was installed early on. Nice. Look at those nice rounded textured buttons. If we go to preferences, let's have a look at what search engines were available at the time. Internet search, oh, it was there. It just had that the word internet at the beginning, which we tend not to use anymore. When we talk about search, everyone knows we're talking about internet search. It's just the way it is, isn't it? But back in 2002, internet search was a specific thing. And we're using Netscape's own search, but we've got the options of Google. So it looks like Bing was not in there. Not that it existed, I don't think. Was it at that time, was it? Anyway, curious to see an old version of Mozilla. And that suite had the web browser. It had email and news groups, and it also had basic HTML editing as well. Very, very interesting times they were. Things were changing very, very rapidly. Okay, so we've got the base install. We don't have any way of creating backup media as far as I've discovered so far. Is it worth having a look on the drive itself? Could be. Let's just have a little look. So there shouldn't be anything in my documents for the admin account. There isn't. So that's good. Let's just go up and look. So yeah, so the hard drive is split into two partitions, a C and D, and that's what we thought, and together they come to just under 20 gigabytes. There was a mobile device attached by the looks of it at some point. We need to check if the floppy is working. Should we do that now? So I've got a brand new floppy. The media is good. It's always risky putting a nice fresh floppy into an unknown drive, but just in case the drive is faulty, it might damage the disk, and they're getting harder to find. So let's access the disk, let's format it, see if that works. Let's do something more channel appropriate. We're not going to do a quick format because we want to access all the tracks on the disk to make sure the head's moving. Let's create a bootable one. We are going to erase everything on there. Yes, please. That's what I want. Don't know how well you can hear that, but it sounds like it's moving correctly. The progress bar's updating correctly. So that's all good. Sounds like we have a working floppy, which is nice. So this is going to be in a great bridge machine. I'm probably not going to use it for that because I've got other ones, but this would be a great bridge machine. It's got an optical drive and a floppy disk drive, so we can use it for creating disk images for older machines, including 720K drives. External USB floppies aren't very good at creating those. Internal ones tend to work better. I suppose there is a small chance it's using a USB interface internally, but because it's modular, don't know. So anyway, that worked really well. So it looks like the floppy disk drive works. Optical drive works, we know that because we booted off it to load the password software. So we want to look in drive to see if there's anything in here that could be restore media. And I'm not seeing anything obvious. I'm not sure what .trash is, but it's empty. Got Adobe software. There's a hidden folder which is BJ printer, so that'd be a Canon BubbleJet driver, documents and settings, a couple of recovered files from a scan disk that's happened in the past. GNU PG as I don't know if that's GPG. Okay, so basically that's an encrypting and signing bit of software for email. KPCMS. Nothing in there that would be restore media. My music's not going to be there. PC study, that will be, yeah, I think that's that Bible software. PM5, that's the PageMaker 5. Program files, so there's all the stuff in there that we want to keep, but we actually want the install, not the end result. PS fonts is empty. Temp is empty. UCD. That is something. It's got a Sony install here, and it's got some Sony logos. That's not. Yeah, that's not big enough to. Let's open the documentation. It's not big enough to install all the stuff we need. But it is Adobe Photoshop Elements. That's nice. So there's one installer we can rescue from here. 1.4 megabytes doesn't really seem big enough though. Okay. So it may or may not be useful. Windows. So loads of temporary folders for system updates that have been added. Config, nothing in there. eHome, I'm not sure what that is, but there's nothing in there that we can use for restoring. I don't think anything in here is related to the VAIO restore disks. Just have a quick look. It would be nice if you just came across an option cabs type situation where we had all the installers in one place, but I don't think that's going to happen. That's just normal Windows XP stuff. Some crash reports. Movie. No. Newsoft. So there's loads of stuff that's been installed here, but nothing that is relevant to software distribution, and that's all about Windows updates again, isn't it? So I think we're out of luck in terms of finding the original install MSI installers, etc. I don't think there's anything in here. But I'm just going to quickly check. There was no Sony directory and there's no VAIO directory. So it doesn't look like it, but I'm just going to quick look in there just to make sure. Yeah, no. Have a look in temporary folder. So there is some stuff in there. There's a small setup file, but it's not going. That's going to be something that's been downloaded. Win SXS. Again, that's Windows XP internal stuff. So we are completely out of luck. There doesn't appear to be anything in here that we can use as a restore. Let's just order these by size, just so if something really large jumps out. Wallpaper, that's not really gonna do it, is it? There's a cleaner, hibernate file, okay. So that's a little bit of a shame in that we haven't got anything we can create some restore media for other people with. What we have got at the minimum though is a disk image that we can use. If we image it now, and then we can delete the accounts we don't want, remove any temporary files, just get it all nice and tidy back to a default Windows XP install. We'll keep the apps that are installed. Should we have a quick look? Let's have a quick look in here. I forgot to look within the second partition. No, nothing in there. This is that logo thing as a readme. And that's the thing we looked at, wasn't it? So nothing on the D drive either. Let's just have a quick look. It shouldn't be in there, but let's have a little look in that other users folders, see if there's anything on his desktop. No. 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 So apart from his personal data, we don't need to look in there. What about the guest account? Shouldn't be anything in here either. There were some files in there, but there's no Sony VAIO specific stuff. So, in summary, we're in a really good situation. The laptop's working. It's a really nice condition. It's got the original install on it. So what we need to do is image that. We'll have to take the drive out. There wasn't a removable caddy for the drive, unfortunately, which means we're going to have to disassemble it. May or may not show that on the video. Then we're going to image that. Then we're going to come back, put it back in, and delete the accounts, create a new user account, and clean out all the dross. And then that'll be, we could image it again then, potentially, and that would probably be the best outcome, wouldn't it? But overall, I'm very, very happy. Depending on how easy it is to disassemble, I might video that, I may not. But overall, very happy with my purchase of this Sony VAIO PCG-FX501. If you've got one of these and you have the recovery media, please consider uploading it to archive.org. It is a massive pain in the, you know what, when we're trying to stop these things from going to landfill, but if you can't get the drivers, if you can't get the right software, then these machines become doorstops. So there's a trade-off to be made. We're not doing Sony out of any money. We're not doing Microsoft out of any money. This is a legit computer with a legit certificate of authenticity on it. So I don't know how you feel, but if you have got them, do consider uploading them to archive.org, and I'll check in a few weeks to see if anybody's done that. Here we are, our first looks at this very nice 21-year-old Sony VAIO. And as I said, I think this is the kind of the last of the original type of VAIOs before they went a little bit off-piste and lost their way. You may disagree with me, but there you go. So this was indeed the RAM cover. There's one module in there, 256 megs. There's space for another module. It might be possible to increase that using 5 12 megabyte modules. Windows XP would run really nicely in 512K. There's a load of screws around the bottom, and they're all indicated with little arrows. And normally that signifies you need to take those out. Take the chassis apart. Sometimes it's just to show the keyboard removal, like on IBM's, but on this one it seems to be all the way around the chassis, so we'll take all of those out. There's no hidden screws under either of those covers I've just taken off. I can't see a CD, I can't see a hard disk caddy that's easily accessible. We'll probably have to take the keyboard off at the minimum. It's not clear if the CD-ROM is removable individually either. But let's take all these screws out and have a look. So I've got some organizer for the screws. Some are quite long. Right side. I wonder if they're all going to be the same length. IBM's pretty good about using a few different types of screws as possible. Some other manufacturers are a little bit less good at that. So those two are the same. There was no screw under there, wasn't there? And this one's might be a different length. Nope, that's the same as well. Well, IBM's, the ones across the front typically are a bit shorter. But often IBM has a little, stuck on the T42 for example, there's a little sticker on the bottom that shows you the length of the screws, and each screw hole is numbered. So you can tell which type of screw goes in which hole, which is nice. Having all the screws the same is even nicer. Doing things like hiding screws at 90 degrees underneath the battery bay, like in a MacBook, that's a bit of a nightmare. This isn't coming out. I might have to get a little magnet on that. So even, you know, back in the noughties, Apple was not very keen on you servicing the inside of their computers. They made it as hard as possible. These screws are pretty tight. I don't think they've been taken out before, and none of them are missing. So that's all reassuring. So those screws aren't coming out. Let's just take out the RAM so we don't damage it while it's upside down. That was a modem under there. I'm just going to leave that in because it probably doesn't need to come out. So let's turn these over. 3 screws should come out, and we're in luck. They're all the same length. So thank you, Sony, for that. So even though you haven't made a obvious way to get to the hard drive, you haven't made it too difficult. So I can't see any screws under there. There are 2 screws on the back. In fact, there's more than 2 screws. There's 3 on this. There's a cluster of 3 here, and there's 1 here. None of those have got little arrows on them. I'm guessing we've taken all we need to get the keyboard off. Maybe even the front panel. So I haven't seen a tutorial about how to do this. I'm just making it up as we go along, but there definitely is 2 separate panels here, an upper and a lower. I've taken the screws out, so the only thing that's remaining must be clips. So let's have a little go with the spudger. See if that helps separate them. It does a little bit. So plastic spudger is the preferred way of doing this. If you use a metal one, there's a good chance you'll crack some plastic. We might still crack some plastic with the plastic one, but it's less likely. So I've got all the way around from there around to here. I just need to get off these. Whenever you have these thin little vertical sections next to seams, that's where it's most likely to crack. So I'm just going to be a little bit careful here. Oops, I just clipped that back down. What did we do on the other side? We only got as far as the corner. So we already have 1 casualty, a little bit of plastic there. So there's a little clip here. This might be easier with a CD-ROM drive drawer open. It might not. So this seam is kind of underneath, which makes it harder to get this spudger in. There's not as much room. I am going to use the screwdriver for this. Hopefully it won't affect it cosmetically because it's underneath. There we go. Certainly separating relatively okay. There's definitely something holding it in, but I can't currently see it. I am going to close that again. Obviously there's a connector for the trackpad in there somewhere. Same with this side, because the seam is underneath, I'm going to use the screwdriver to try and open it without breaking it, but I am failing. I think that's... Okay, might we get the spudger down here now? So I propped it open a little bit with the screwdriver. I just run the spudger along there. That might do it. Very close. There we go. So that's the one side off. So I can see the ribbon cable for the trackpad. So that's good. So I know where that is. Battery cover has just popped off. Hopefully it'll be obvious how that goes back on. So I just need to separate the top cover above the optical drive, and that's not proving very easily. I'm going to damage the optical drive if I'm not careful. I haven't missed a screw, have I? Nope. Sorry, optical drive, I am being quite rough with you. So it's nearly off. There's just this top edge by the optical drive is not coming free. And you can't take the optical drive out, there's no screw here, which is where it normally is to stop it from coming out. Let's keep the spudger in there just to prop it open. That's worked. So again, what I'm doing is going underneath the seam. It seems to be working better than from the side. I think there's just one little catch left at the end. But it may be that it goes under the other little plastic thing. So it's been quite reluctant to come off. It feels like I've missed a catch somewhere. The screws on the back, here and here, they're holding a separate bit of plastic in place. So I don't think it's those. I think maybe this top bit of plastic trim, the purple bit underneath the screen, is what needs to come off. A bit like on a Toshiba, those kind of late 90s Toshibas. There's a strip either at the top or the bottom of the keyboard that you have to get off before you can take out the keyboard. I'm wondering now if it's a bit like that, and whether this strip here needs to come off first. I'm going to loosen the two screws at the back just to see if that makes it feel any looser. These look more like hinge screws though, so I don't want to let the hinge fall apart by accident. So I'm just going to do that. The screen may now open a little bit more. Can we get this off? It's definitely made this little bit of plastic looser, but I don't think it's affected this one. Let's try the other end. Oh, there is an extra screw. I suspect if I undo this, things will get a lot easier very quickly. Yeah, look at that. So this now comes off. And there's an additional screw here underneath that that's holding the top on. It's got a slightly smaller thread. Okay, so that makes sense. It did feel like there was something holding it on that I couldn't see. There's an additional screw here for the keyboard. Those two are the same. Put them together. There we go. All right, so that's much easier. So under here is the connector for the trackpad. So we just need to loosen that by prising up either side of the little adapt connector, and then that should come out. Needs to come up a little bit more. It's always really hard to judge how much pressure to apply to these. You often end up breaking them off. But there you go. So that's come off. And there's a ribbon at the back, which I'm hoping to be able to leave on. Okay, so this plastic part has now come away. Oh, it's really clean, you know. There's no grub down the edge of this, down the edge of the keyboard like there often is. So I'm just going to leave the keyboard there. The hard drive is right here in the middle. There's no way we'd be able to get that from the outside. You definitely have to take those bits apart. And there's these hooks underneath the front of the keyboard, so you have to take the palm rest off to move the keyboard. So we didn't have to do everything we've just done, although it would have been slightly easier if I'd spotted that extra screw a little bit earlier. I'm just going to prop up the keyboard with the battery and the floppy drive, just so that it doesn't have a tendency to flip up, and that means we can let go. Right, so here's the drive. It's a standard IDE. There's a flex ribbon connector going in. There's a kind of earthing copper tape here. That side. So all of that's keeping the optical drive in position. There's the optical drive cable. There's the fan, which is really clean. I don't think this laptop has had very much use at all. So let's zoom in a little bit on it. So everything inside here is really clean. I don't think it's ever been opened before either. So that's good. Manufacturing date, 1/16/2002. So 16th of January 2002, a very early 2002 revision. Nice. It's all looking good. I haven't seen a CMOS battery. Aha, I can just see it. It's just underneath the optical drive, just down here, and it's one of the tiny coin cell ones. It would be sensible to replace that while we're in here, wouldn't it? But that means taking the optical drive out. Do we do that? Oh, let's have a little look. It's not one of the types that tends to leak, so that's reassuring. That's for DVD. Let's get off the connector. So in theory that should now just pop out. It's got some tape on it though. So taking that tape up, the optical drive should just pop out. Looks like it's going to. In fact, I don't need to take it all the way out. But here, I don't know if you can see it, here's the CMOS battery. It's a coin cell, but it's a particularly small one. I'm probably not going to have one to replace it. Let's try and get it out without shorting it. Come on. It's got 4 little prongs on it, and it's difficult to get all 4 at the same time. And the actual battery holder's moving a little bit, which makes me a bit nervous that I'm going to rip it off the board, even though I'm being quite gentle. Here we go. Positive side up, if I forget. Yeah, exactly. So the battery holder's come off the board. That's a bit of a bugger. So we're never going to be able to store date and time over periods, but yeah, that's not a great design. Okay, if it's no longer attached to the board, it doesn't matter if I short it out. Still not very clear. prongs need to be retracted. Disaster. Let's put those under there. Don't know how well you can see it on the camera, it's just here. See if I can zoom in. So the terminal on this side has become desoldered. It wasn't very strongly connected. I was just trying to prise the battery out. I wasn't really applying very much force, but it definitely didn't want to come out. This battery holder is a bit of an unusual shape compared to most of the button cell ones I've seen before. There's no obvious correct way of doing it. It looks like these 4 prongs are holding it in, but they're not. And neither of the 2 big sections. So, how do we get this out? There we go. Alright. So, I haven't got a soldering iron to hand, but it's possible to resolder that on this side if you're feeling adventurous. I'm not going to bother, because the battery terminal has come off, I'm not going to bother putting another coin cell in there. They're 1220s, by the way. So pretty small, not commonly available, but just so you know, for future reference. Okay, let's get this optical drive back in. So connector goes in the back. In fact, let's just leave it out slightly just so that it gives us more room to do the hard drive. So it looks like the hard drive is held down with this tape, same as the optical drive was, and then there's 2 screws in the IDE connector, and then it looks like the whole thing just comes out, and then it's inside a caddy. Oh, there's 1 more screw here. Let's take that one out. Just going to put that there. Let's undo these 2. So all of these appear to be the same size, which is convenient. Thank you, Sony, but no thank you for that battery holder. I really like the way that the ThinkPads have the battery holder, usually very accessible, sometimes near the battery, sometimes near a RAM cover, but it's usually much easier to change the battery on one of them. Let's get this tape off. Which way is going to come off easier? Looks like it's going to come off the heatsink easier than it's going to come off the caddy, so let's do that. Right, so in theory, this should now just... Oh, 1 more screw. Hiding over here in the shadows. Again, it's the same as the other 3. So we could just try and disconnect the connector from the hard drive, but there's hardly any room, so it made sense to unplug the connector from the motherboard. So, any other screws that I'm now... Yes, there's another one here. They did not want you to get this caddy out easily. It was definitely not designed. Okay, so the caddy's now free. Except it's not. There's another screw hiding under this bundle of cables over on this side. What a well-protected hard drive. I think 2 screws would have done it. 3 maybe. 4 plus 2 on the cable seems a little bit excessive. So it feels like it's come free. Yep. There we go. So standard Toshiba. I'm going to leave it in the caddy. I'm just going to, well, actually, might need to remove the caddy to access the, yeah, you have to take the caddy off to get this off. So you can access the 44 pins. It's held in place with 4 screws around the edge. Sometimes they're on the edge, sometimes they're on the bottom. I'm just going to put those here. Because we need to be able to access the connector so that I can image the drive. That's the whole purpose of taking it out. So thank you for having a removable floppy drive. I think a removable hard drive would potentially have been slightly more useful. So here's the drive with its connector. So sometimes these can be fiddly to get off without actually breaking the solders here on the connector. I'm just going to give it a gentle pull. It's not particularly moving, so usually the trick is to get a very thin screwdriver down between the connector. Can you see it's just lifted up a little bit? So go to the other end, do the same. Just wiggle it off. So here we go. There we go. Connector's off. So what you want to try not doing is exactly what I've just done, is when I took this off, it didn't come off quite square, so these last couple of pins are bent over very slightly. It's really common with the 44 pin connectors. You can just push them back with your fingernails or with a screwdriver just to line the back up. And that's usually good enough. You have to make sure they're square both in this plane and this plane and that plane. Which that now is. So what I'm going to do is going to take this and image it in my bridge computer, and then we can put it back in and tidy it up. So what we've got here is my bridge computer with the side permanently off. It's got it's a great computer because it's got SATA, IDE, and a floppy drive connector. So you can connect pretty much anything to this one way and another. What I've got here is a IDE cable and an IDE 40 to 44 pin adapter. So that's what we're going to use to image this drive. So let's just connect all this up. This is often permanently attached. I just have it disattached at the moment just because I was doing something else with it. But let's just get some power in there as well, because obviously the 44 pin connector provides data and power. This is keyed, this is keyed. Let's make sure you get the right way around. There we go. So we're going to turn this computer on now. Make sure the drive is recognised in the BIOS, and then we're going to use macro reflect to image the drive. So turn the power on. I've got indicator lights on the drive, so that's good. It's recognised it. So there you go. So we have it detected in the BIOS. That means we should be able to boot and image it really easily. So let's save the configuration. I've got this configured for dual boot, so we can either boot to Linux or to Windows 10. Let's go Windows 10 because then we can use macREM. So we may have to stop using macREM because they've removed the free edition from their portfolio, which is a bit of a shame. Okie dokie. So this machine has a SSD for the main operating system and a 2 terabyte drive for kind of random data. So it now has a 20 gigabyte drive in it as well. Oh, that's very frustrating.
2 hours later.
Okay, so we're in Mac Room. We're going to find the disk we want to image, and it is the Toshiba 20 gig here that's got VAIO for the first partition and local disk as the second partition. Both FAT32 partitions, interestingly, for Windows XP. That's probably because it's the original install. You could always convert those to another file system at another time using various tools, but we're just going to clone. We're going to image this disk. We're going to image both partitions. We're going to store it on the desktop. We're going to call it Sony VAIO PCG-FX501 as received. Then I'm going to click next. So we are going to just image it once, so we're not going to create a backup that runs automatically for this. That's all the information. If we click finish, we're not going to save the backup, we're just going to run it now. So 20 gigs these days isn't very much. It's going to come through the existing IDE port on the motherboard, not through a USB 2 or 3 adapter or anything, so it should be fairly rapid, but this is a a fairly slow hard drive. I suspect it's a 4200 RPM drive, haven't double checked. So this might take a little while, although because there's a lot of free space, that doesn't take very much time to cover. So overall progress, I reckon it's going to take about a quarter of an hour to do that. As you see, the images worked. It only took just over 8 minutes in the end, so that's nice. Cool, so let's disconnect it and put it back in the laptop. So we've got to put the connector on first, which will help us tell us which way up in the drive caddy the drive needs to go. Let's get this on without breaking the flex cable. So it's going this way around. And hopefully the holes should line up, they do, so that's good. Just a little bit off on this back one here. So put the two diagonals in, that should make sure the other holes line up, which they do. It's a shame about that battery holder, but I kind of could have seen it coming. It was very loosely attached to the board, which is a bit of a shame though. Alright, let's get this back in here. So there's a standoff here which needs to go on. That just basically just drops into place pretty straightforward. There's a small slot in the motherboard that standoff goes into. This cable needs to be above those so we can push it down into the connector. Here we go. We do need to bring the CD-ROM drive back as well at some point, but let's put the screws in here first. So I'm just going to put the first two in loosely, just so we can make sure the others line up. Again, I'm going to go for the diagonals first. This one in the back left here is not a hole, it's a slot, so there's obviously a little bit of wiggle room on that one. Okay, they're all in, so let's tighten up. Sorry, a little bit in shadow there, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Those four in. Let's just reposition the fan wires so they're not going to get caught on the other side of the keyboard. Let's put this tape back down as best we can. It's going to be a little bit lifting up, but I think it's mainly there to create an earth. Let's put the connector screws back in so the connector makes a good connection. So there we go. The hard drive is back in. The CD-ROM should be fairly straightforward as well. We just line up the connector with the back of the drive and push that in when it wants to go in. It's a bit of an angle. There we go. So we're leaving the PRAM battery. Been working on Macs too long. We're leaving the CMOS battery empty for now. Hopefully it will boot without one. Put the drive screw back in that holds the CD-ROM drive, and then replace that tape again. I think it's just earthing tape. I don't think it serves any mechanical purpose. Is there anything else interesting in here while we're looking? I think so. So let's bring this back over. So because of the way they made this, they had to put a an attachment on the hard disk caddy that sticks forward to screw the keyboard to, which doesn't seem very kind of obvious. I'm not quite sure why they've done that. I'm sure there was a different way of designing the internals that could have been a little bit easier to engineer. A bit worried that there's nothing else to hold the keyboard in place specifically apart from the palm rest. In fact, yeah, let's take that one out. Let's put the keyboard into the palm rest before we tighten that. Just be mindful of that flex cable. So the palm rest is roughly in the right place, and this kind of tucks in underneath it. There we go. That seems to be in place. So once I've got it in place, we can clip it down. Let's make sure don't need to put any other screws in, I think. Just this one up here. Aha, I need to do the palm rest ribbon cable, don't I? So let's just do that before I get too carried away. It's going to go in fairly easily, I think. It's reasonably rigid. Yep. Appears to have gone in. Let's clamp it down. There we go. We can still get to the battery just by taking off this top cover. So I'm going to reassemble these bits just so we don't break any cables. So there's one screw holding the keyboard in at the top. The bottom's held in by the little clips underneath the palm rest. And there's a second screw up here that keeps the top end of the palm rest in position, which interestingly is not located. Seems like it needs to be up about 1 millimetre. There you go. Perfect. So keyboard's back on. So this bar's got 2 clips at this end which catch under here, and then there was a screw in this end. So it is a bit like those Toshibas I was mentioning before. Okay, so the end's gone in. It's in the right place. It doesn't want to clip down for some reason. What have I done wrong? Nothing as far as I know. So there's a little bit in the middle that you have to put down before you slide it. I think it's the same with this end. There's a little clip. There we go. So we should have started there. We should have just undone that one screw to remove that top cover. That would have given us a clue what to do next. Yes, that one's going in much. Same thread, slightly smaller head. Okay, so let's unplug it. Just want to put in those screws that we took out from the back, just in case structurally they're important. Electronically they're not going to be. I don't want the hinges to become weakened. Okay, so the screws from the bottom are still out, but we should have a working laptop. But we haven't got any RAM. Let's put some RAM in. Make sure it's not that's the problem. And I might as well put the RAM cover on. Pretty much finished with the underside now. So we didn't have to take the bottom cover off as such, so we could have left those probably on for the disassembly. Right. So let's tie it back in there. I can hear the hard drive spin up and the fan, and now we have the Sony logo. F2 to set up because it's lost all the information. So let's just give it a random date just so it knows that it's not. I do that a lot in my videos, don't I? I start a sentence and then finish it. So we have some random dates so it knows it hasn't just been restarted from a flat battery. So it's going to boot from the CD-ROM first if we need it to. That's really good. Let's just check that it will boot. If it does, we'll turn it off, put the screws back in, and then we'll go in and see what we can do about those accounts. So we're booting to Windows. All good. so it's fully booting. So I'm happy I haven't broken anything apart from the battery cover, battery container. Let's turn this off, put the other screws in, put the battery back in. Battery. This fell out when we were assembling or disassembling. I probably need to put that back in before I fully put the screws in. That's the battery cover, by the way. Right. So let's work out how the battery cover goes in. So basically there's just these two little metal prongs. One sits on either side, and this one will go in without the screws. That's nice. Okay, so that was easy. So let's get the screws in before it pops back out again. All the screws in the bottom were the same size. Let's do the two around the battery compartment, just so that we keep that door in place. Don't want it falling off again. So we have lost a few of the catches, the plastic clips that hold the top and the bottom half together, but the amount of screws that are in here, that shouldn't be a problem. Hopefully we didn't damage the optical drive when we were trying to get the case off. I noticed it's sitting very slightly more proud than it was before, I think. Just putting all the screws back in. There's the last one, there it is. There's a cover there. I wonder if there was going to originally be another screw there that was never needed in the end. It's nice that it's still got its original flap on the back covering up the ports. A lot of laptops lose those within the first couple of years. Certainly after 21 years, I'm surprised it's still there, but I'm grateful it's still there. Oh, there you go, there's an eBay auction going off that I might be interested in. I should probably stop buying stuff, shouldn't I? I have run out of room. So all the screws have gone back in. That seems pretty snug. But yes, these few little bits of case have come off where the clips have broken. They're very thin, so I'm not sure they would have held things in structurally. They probably just helped guide things into place. Let's put the floppy drive back in. And let's put the battery back in. Let's see if the battery cover works now. I've broken it and taken it off. Yes, that's all fine. So that's good. Which way around does it go? It goes that way around. So we still don't know if that battery holds the charge. We haven't had it on charge long enough to find out. We will no doubt find out fairly soon. Let's get the video capture back on. And then we can have a look at those accounts. So you've got power, got video capture. Turn this around a little bit so you can see the screen easier. It's always worth getting a little mat to put your laptops down onto so they don't get scratched. And something to store your screws in. Mine's a little painter's mixing tray. And I've just written in some random generic words that help me remember where screws go. Right. So let's see if it's all working. See if the video capture is going to work. So we're going to have to do that every time now, aren't we? Which is a shame, but it is what it is. It's a fixable problem. We just need to go in there with a soldering iron. Not sure my skills are up to that still at the moment. Well, that's another video. But yes, for reference, it takes 1220 button cells. So pretty small. Don't remember seeing one that small before actually. But considering this is kind of a desktop replacement type system, I'm surprised they didn't find room for something slightly bigger. But there you go. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to remove the accounts we don't want. We're going to create a new account. We're going to set an admin password eventually. It's pretty speedy considering it's only got 256 megs of RAM and Windows XP Service Pack 2. It's pretty nippy. So maybe that drive is more than a 4200. Anyway, back. So we want settings. We want a control panel. So what we want to go do is look at user accounts. And Andy's account, we're going to delete it. Hopefully, Andy, you haven't got anything on here you want kept for prosperity. You wouldn't have sold the laptop or given away if you had, I presume. So I'm just going to go for it. We do have an image of this drive in theory. We're going to delete Andy's files because he doesn't want us to look at them. And we're going to delete Andy's account. Trackpad's still working, so I did manage to get that cable back in. I haven't tried the keyboard yet. Make sure we haven't damaged the keyboard flex cable. There we go. I don't like having the guest account on, so we're going to turn that off. We're going to create a new account. Although it's tempting to be a computer administrator, from a security point of view, particularly an XP game for a limited account, is probably the safest thing to do. Should we change the picture? Is the one that's more appropriate? Yeah, probably that one. We'll add a password in a bit. But first of all, let's just go back. We've done user accounts. Let's have a look at the add or remove programs, and we'll remove anything that doesn't look like it's supposed to be on here. Although it's very tempting to keep the licensed apps like PageMaker. So. Beatnik Player, I'm not sure if that is... So the Beatnik Player, I don't know if that's a Sony original. Let me just quickly look that up on a different computer. It's made by Sonic. So it's not a Sony original. I'm tempted to remove that. We'll come back to that. WinDVD almost certainly came via Sony because of the DVD drive. Office 2000 Premium, so it was Office 2000 that was on there. That was a really good version of Office, wasn't it? Did a lot of things well, that one did. Movie Shaker's original. Mozilla probably isn't original, and there's lots of user settings in the guest account probably, so we could uninstall that. My DSC, I'm guessing that's the Olympus thing, isn't it? I know that's the Olympus thing, isn't it? Let's remove that version of Mozilla. Let's remove these Bible study programs. There's 3 of them, so they obviously had a significant interest in this. So the uninstall can't find those. Let's see if it can find the main. No, okay. Interestingly, it can't. Power Archiver, I'm almost certain that is third party, so let's uninstall that.
2 hours later.
What I'm going to do is reboot. And what I've got here is a couple of things. Let's just turn off rather than reboot. So I've got Norton Internet Security, and I've got a feeling, this is 2004, so it's about the right age for this. I've got a feeling these disks are bootable, so we should be able to boot from here and run a virus scan. It may show something before we can go any further. So let's pop the tray open while it's still got power. So let's pop that in. Turn it back on. It's going to boot from the optical drive by default. And here it's being up. Hopefully you can too. So we're going to boot from the CD-ROM. Yeah, not antivirus, emergency virus repair. So it looks like press A key to continue. So it looks like we can do a virus scan direct from the CD, which is nice. And it's obviously read-only, so we can't accidentally infect our source.
2 hours later.
So there we have it. The lovely PCG-FX501. Sony have very snazzy names for their computers, don't they? Possibly the last of the best Sony VAIOs, in my opinion. You may disagree. Feel free to leave a comment down below. But I think it's just a beautiful looking little laptop. Well, it's not so little. A beautiful looking kind of desktop replacement laptop. It has got the dual processor, but it's running at 1 gigahertz. It's pretty fast enough for everything we've done on it today. It's really nice to get it back to its kind of bare install. Hopefully you think that's nice too. I'm definitely going to be keeping this. I've got a few other VAIOs that have a similar sort of aesthetic, and it's going to make a nice addition to that, to those. So, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you in the next one.